Lord, even as we enter into this learning and as we have discussions, Lord, we pray that our deliberations may be useful to each one of us and even our colleagues that we know that we do not know. We thank you, Father, for a good beginning and a good ending. In Jesus' name we pray and believe. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Anne, for starting us off today. As you have seen from the topic, we are discussing about love and mental health, and basically the impact of relationships on mental health. And with us today, we have Serene Minds joining us, and they will be taking us through the session. And without further ado, because I know we'll have quite a number of discussions, I would like to welcome Arthur Gishuru to start us off. Karibu Arthur, please share your screen again. It has gone off. Yeah, the presentation. Yeah.
It has gone off because I wanted to give you a flower.
Oh my God, thank you very much.
It's the month of love. It's the month of love, and tomorrow is Valentine's. How are you, everyone, from wherever you are joining? My name is Ada Gishuru. I'm a clinical psychologist at Serene Minds Wellness, and it's a pleasure having you today to discuss this wonderful discussion that is ahead of us. And I know we're gonna learn a lot. We have a panelist that's gonna take us through. And also with us, we have two lived experiences, people who are willing to come out and share their stories, share what they went through, just to tell you that, yes, there is love as well also, and there is what happens in love. And even after we have gone through a hard time in a relationship, there is always life after that. And therefore, I'll not take much of that time. I just want us to go straight into a preamble just to set the mood. And the topic ahead of us today, we're just looking at love, connection, and well-being. You know, these are the pillars of a fulfilling relationship. But what happens when the sparks fade? What happens when what you felt like home start feeling unfamiliar? You know, what do we do when we get there? And diving into it immediately, I'll start by saying that human connection and intimacy are intertwined with overall wellness, impacting physical, emotion, and even mental and social health. In fact, research will actually show that meaningful relationship and close connections are essential for fulfilling a healthy life. That is why everyone else wants to be loved or wants to love someone. That is very, very natural for us as human beings. And therefore, human connection and intimacy are not just nice to have, they are essential for overall wellness. And when you talk about love, then love is one of the most powerful forces in our lives. And it has the ability to uplift. But when it doesn't go as planned, because later on we'll be looking at the one that will be saying that, or there is a quote that says that we all fall in love, but we don't fall in love and plan to fail. That is very, very true. No one plans to fail in love, but we all fall in love. And therefore, when it turns to the other way around, when things don't go as planned, it can leave wounds that take time to heal. And failed relationships are not just about heartbreak. They shape our emotional, psychological well-being and affecting how we see ourselves and how we move forward. Because sometimes you are in love, there is a month you are in love, or there is an year you are in love. Then if at all something happens, you feel as if you'll never love again. I know we have been there. We all have a story somewhere. Maybe some of us have a beautiful story from the start. But I know me and you, somewhere, maybe we have this story and we can be able to give those stories whenever we have time. But today, we will hear real stories of resilience, and our panelists will guide us in understanding how we can navigate these challenges with strength and self-awareness. Inside this particular call, we have one gentleman and one lady, very, very beautiful and handsome journey, and they're gonna share with us what they went through and how they are coping with it at the moment. But is there a link between relationship and wellness? Well, sharing feelings and thoughts and becoming more vulnerable will strengthen our emotional bond and therefore promoting our mental health. But then again, those people who go through prolonged loneliness increase the risk of depression, anxiety, and cognitive decline. Well, here I'm not only talking about those people who are not in love or who don't have partners. You can be in a marriage, you can be in a relationship, but still you are lonely. Is quite sad, but it does happen at times. So loneliness increases the risk of depression, anxiety, and even cognitive decline. And healthy relationship provide a safe space to share feelings, reduce stress, and promote emotional well-being. Because whenever you have someone you're sharing, your anxiety, whenever you have someone you're sharing with, the difficulties of life, the challenge that you're going through at your workplace, at least they're helping you to unwind, they're helping you to distress, and these promote emotional well-being. Now, loving, affirming relationship will foster a sense of self-worth and personal growth. But for us to be able to navigate through a relationship, there is a lot of interplay in terms of emotions, and emotions are primitive. Is a primitive thing. It doesn't know a professor. It doesn't know a doctor. It doesn't know a psychologist. Emotions are just primitive things, and therefore we must cultivate one of the most important skill that we call emotional resilience. And this is the ability to adapt, cope, and even recover from emotional challenges. We all want love to be, fair tale. We all want it to be harmony all through, but that does not happen. We'll have seasons whereby this love will be shaken. We'll have seasons whereby hardship will come. The question will be, how will your partner, are you two going to navigate the conflicts? How are you going to solve the challenges that are ahead of you? So emotional resilience will enables us to adjust to changes or even challenges within that relationship without losing our emotional balance, without you projecting your anger to the other person, without you probably, calling them names, or probably your anger is all over and you're not able now to have that balanced relationship. So this allows couples to navigate life's ups and downs with grace, understanding, and even mutual support. Because it reaches a time whereby love languages are not working. People are not even feeling the need of taking those flowers. They don't feel the taste of the chocolates. Now, what suffice is that emotional resilience. And this emotional resilience, again, it cannot exist without a particular foundation. And time to time, you'll hear people say, I don't trust my partner. So the foundation of us having a proper relationship or a healthy relationship is trust. And trust cannot exist without a particular environment. And that environment that I'm talking about is what we call psychological safety. And this is the ability to express oneself freely, take emotional risk, feel secure without fear of judgment, rejection, or even retaliation. Are you able to come out clean and tell your partner that this is what I'm feeling about you? This is what I'm feeling right now. I'm not in a good state, without feeling judged or even rejected or even having to retaliate. Because the moment you start repressing emotion in a relationship, that is where now communication starts breaking. And that is the beginning of major issues in a relationship. So psychological safety will be the foundation of trust, openness, and even emotional intimacy. It will foster security, allow partners to be vulnerable with each other, leading to emotional intimacy and strengthening bond. It will reduce our stress and even anxiety, the doubt that you might be having about your partner. If you keep on communicating, if there is that open environment whereby they can talk about their issues, then they will feel secure and they will always talk about everything else. And you'll be reducing any kind of a mental impact that might come with the issue of insecurity that is always talked about here and there. When people say, I'm feeling insecure, I don't know where he is, I don't know where she is, I don't know whether she's still in love or all those manner of things comes as a result of people feeling insecure, and it tells you that the psychological safety is in question in that relationship. So when partners feel psychologically safe, they are more likely to share their thoughts, their feelings, and honesty, and this leads to deeper understanding. It is true that relationship works. It is true that we can cultivate healthier relationship. And as I began by quoting that we all fall in love, but no one ever plans to fail in love, because whenever you're falling in that relationship, you saw it. You had a dream of 1 year, of 10 years, of 15 years. You didn't foresee yourself breaking with this person after 2 days. But there comes a time where things don't work. There comes a time where it goes the other way around. That is why we are here. Some of us are healing. Some of us are still hurting. Some of us are still trying to make sense of what went wrong. And others are still wondering if love is worth it, if is worth it after all. Sometimes we are heartbroken. Nowadays, I hear people say, in that relationship, I was heartbroken, and even I think my backbone is now gone. We make all those funny jokes around there. But that goes to tell you that, yes, people, when they get broken, it takes a lot of things. It takes away a lot of things. It actually, at some point, feels like grief. And I know our team of experts, the psychologists, will be able to share why does it feel like that way. But the question I want to leave here before I invite our first participant to share, I'm gonna ask you: is love truly what breaks us? Or is it the version of love we accepted? Because by the time you're falling in love, there was that particular version that you saw. And that is why people say, maybe I saw the red flags, but maybe in one way or the others, I made them yellow or amber or something like that. I didn't want to see them as red. So is it that truly is love that breaks us, or is it the version of love that we accepted? Now, as I stop sharing, as I invite Mr. G, help us stop sharing. Thank you. As I invite Mr. G, with us we have a gentleman who has defied the odds of the community and the society. Because in most cases, we normally say that, yeah, men don't share, men don't come out clean, and men don't even seek support. Now, today in this conversation, we are joined by a gentleman who really wants to share his story, a gentleman who is not afraid, a gentleman who has gone through it. And I know Mr. G, or Mr. Wadingira, I know, if I may rewind a little bit of this particular tape, I know there was a time you are falling into this love. And I know you didn't fall in love to fail in love. There is something that you saw. But I want you to take us through your story, even if it will not be deep. Is there a way that childhood, the way of your upbringing, shaped the kind of a woman or the kind of a lady or the kind of a relationship that you entered into? And also, I want you to also take us through a time that you realized that, oh, I cannot do this anymore. And you faced the mirror and you told yourself that, yes, it is time to leave, or it is time to take the boat. The mic is all yours. The story is yours. Welcome.
All right, thanks, Arthur. So good morning to everyone. My name is Wathingira, as you've heard, but everybody calls me G. You're welcome to call me that as well. Maybe I'll start with your second question, Arthur. I think for me, I can't say that there was a time when I woke up and decided it was time to leave. I think as happens with most marriages when they're coming to an end, you get to a point where you start to realize things are not working, but you're so invested in whatever is going on. And in many respects, in my case, there's a bit of maybe denial. I think I'm also not afraid to say I was a bit delusional, believing that things were fixable. But there were moments leading up to the break where I realized, yeah, things are not getting better. Maybe I need to stop putting in the effort. Maybe I need to stop doing 1, 2, and 3, and I started to pull back. But even then, up until the point that my ex asked for a separation, I still believed that something was workable. And it was not until much later when I was, filing for divorce that, okay, so it took me about 1 year and 6 months to file for divorce after the separation. But even during that whole period, I still believed that things were fixable, and I stuck on that, and I held on to that hope. But the more I stayed separated, the more it became clear that the marriage that I was holding on to didn't exist anymore. I needed to face the reality of what my relationship is or was, and not the fantasy or the hopes of what I wanted it to be. And so therefore started the long journey towards that. And to your first question about childhood and how does childhood impact your choice of spouse. So I'm going to say something that was my very hard-won wisdom last year, and I'm sure Noni, who will speak after me, will also agree with this. And I summarize it in one very simple phrase, which is you marry your unfinished business. And what that means is that at the point that you're getting married, so first of all, you attract people at the level of healing or unhealed that you're at. And there are, there are things that you attract about each other because you recreate certain things that happen to you as you are growing up, certain experiences, certain feelings. And if you haven't dealt with them by the time you get married, then they get exposed in the course of your marriage. And that's what we typically now call triggers. And what marriage is supposed to be is a safe space where you explore those unhealed versions of yourself. And hopefully, if your marriage is safe enough, it's a good enough space for you um, to work through them, to find safety, what you said earlier about psychological safety in your spouse, and then emerge out of it a better, fuller version of yourself together with your spouse, assuming that you're both doing that. So to the extent that your marriage is not a safe space for either of you, then that's not going to happen. And unfortunately, you may end up in situations such as the ones that we find ourselves in. So yes, very much so, your childhood and what you grew up with very, very much influences who you end up marrying and how your marriage works out, including how it will survive or how it will end. Arthur. Hi, Arthur.
Sorry, I was speaking and I was muted. Sorry. Thank you so much, Mr. Adingira, for taking us through that. And what I'm hearing from you is that, yeah, there was unfinished business, and probably what you attracted was the same, the kind of energy that was missing probably in the childhood. Now, I just want us to go back to that time. Maybe now you have realized that this thing is not working for you. How did it feel psychologically to now take the bold step, now face the other way around and say that, okay, I now have to, things are not okay, and this is now over? How did it feel psychologically? Did you find yourself giving up at some point, or probably even taking rounds and saying, or should I give it time again? Should I try? And yet you knew that maybe at some point you had already given up, the marriage had already gone the other way.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question because in my particular case, I was very hopeful all the way to the end. And that's what I was saying earlier, that I would say to an extent, maybe even slightly self-delusional in that sense, because I really held on to hope that we could fix things. And I guess that addresses part of your question. So we separated and moved out of home in June of 2023, and filed for divorce in October of last year. And it's during that period between June and October, that 1.5 months period, that I really started to look back and to really reflect on the marriage. And now I think for me, that's when the heavy psychological impact was hitting, and the realization that, oh, actually, this might not be fixable, that actually we're heading towards a very permanent split. There is nothing to reconcile. And that was very heavy. So I went through a lot. One of the things I developed, what I call mental fog, an inability to focus. When I'd come to work, I'd sit and stare at my laptop all day and I can't focus on anything that's in front of me. I'd read an email. 5 minutes later, I've forgotten everything that I had read and I have to read it again. I lost a lot of weight because of not eating properly, because I just lost appetite for a lot of things happening in my mind. I was very lucky that I had a very good, strong support system, which I guess is a question we're going to come to next. So I avoided the worst of what you'd call depression or depression-like issues, but it was still a very, very, very tough period nonetheless. The lows were quite low. There were periods of loneliness. There were periods of very unhealthy coping behaviors and coping mechanisms. And then I thought I'd healed by the time I was coming now towards October. And then the interesting thing that happened after is, in the week leading up to me filing my papers, my emotional state went back up to, a roller coaster. It was a very crazy week. I remember that week. I actually had to go back to my psychiatrist for some medical help as well, to be able to just even out things a little bit and be steady. So it also taught me that this healing journey is not a linear journey. It has many curves, it has many ups and downs. You just never know what's around the corner. But maybe to preempt your next question, having a very solid support system is very, very critical.
Hey, thank you so much. I was to come there and I was to ask, maybe when you you have said that you had a very, very strong support system, and okay, the statistics tell us that men don't open up easily. So who was your first person that you turned to and you told them that, well, in my house, in my relationship, things are not okay? How did it feel? Or did you have any reservation, or you've grown up knowing that, yeah, you should be able to share, and that wasn't a big deal on your side?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I had, before the break, there were two friends who I used to talk with, and I'd tell them, the things that are looking a little bit thick. But at the time, I had not conceptualized that, we might head to a divorce or to a split. And then when we discussed and agreed, okay, this is not working, maybe we take a break, we called our parents together and informed them. And at that meeting, I didn't expect my parents to be very, supportive of me. And to be fair, they took a very neutral position in the meeting because they were not throwing blame or casting aspersions on either side. But when it became clear that this was not going to work, my mom really stepped in a very big way, and I'm always appreciative and very grateful that she did. And when I say she stepped in, I mean, I think she was worried and concerned about the psychological impact and everything else that was going to come from going through this process. She's the one who recognized very early on and helped me put in words that I was going to go through sort of like a grieving process, and I'd have to go through all the 7 stages of grief and everything. And so what she did was she'd call me on a daily basis and text me on a daily basis for the first couple of months during the separation, just to make sure that I was okay. Then I was very lucky. I had another three best friends who played very different roles in that period as well. They came in, they would check in on me regularly. One of them I work with here in the office. So, on days when things were a bit difficult, I'd just walk down to our office, we talk, and that opportunity to good. Before I left the marriage, I had also started therapy. Sorry, there's somebody who's not muted. Okay.
Yvonne, if you're able to mute the person.
Yeah, so, apologies for that. Yeah.
No worries. So a few months before I left the marriage, I had started my own individual therapy with a therapist, which, to your point, it is a very, very big deal. And I wish more men would take the brave step of stepping into therapy. There's a lot that you help to contextualize. And I think having started the therapy even before I left is what prepared me for when the day came that it was clear I needed to leave. That decision was a clear-minded decision as opposed to being an emotional reaction or overreaction to what was happening in my marriage. And I kept up with that therapy. So I think I did almost two full years of therapy. And then last year, a friend of mine introduced me to group therapy that's, it's called Divorce Care, that's being run, in my case, was being run by Nairobi Chapel. But there are a few other churches in Nairobi that also do divorce care, and also there's a non-denominational one. And group therapy gives you something that individual therapy doesn't, because you're sitting in a room with other people who've gone through what you're going through, have had similar experiences. How Nairobi Chapel does it, which is one of the things I like, unlike most other groups where it's mixed men and women throughout. Nairobi Chapel starts out separate, men and women, men separate, women separate. And then it's a total of 13 weeks. So you have 8 separate sessions and then 5 joint sessions. The separate sessions were very useful because now sitting in a room with men and us sharing our story, first of all, there's a brotherhood that forms from that. And then 2, you hear your story reflected in somebody else, but you were not married to the same person, right? It's different people. But hearing your story reflects it is very useful in helping you know I'm not alone, and helping you to regulate your reactions to things that were going on, and be like, okay, fine, I've learned something new from the way this man handled this issue. Maybe when I go back, I can soften here. Maybe when I go back, I can change one, two, or three. So that group therapy was very, very useful. So that by the time I came out of it, the combination of the family support system, my friend support system, individual therapy, and group therapy left me in a very good place where now today, I can sit here and not be afraid to put on my camera and for people to see my name and Google me and find out about me on the internet if they want to. If you want to, like there's that courage that comes from, yeah, it's a thing that happened, but it's not the end of my life. And I'm grateful for where I am now.
Wow, interesting. And thank you so much for the courage. That is what we'll call a handsome. We don't want to call it a beautiful journey. It's a handsome journey. Thank you so much. And before I invite Noni, I know there is a kid that is involved here. And I know with a divorce, the society will paint a man going through a divorce as either absent or struggling. So what has been the reality for you? How is it co-parenting and what have you? How do you find it? And are there struggles? And how have you been able to navigate to date?
Yeah, co-parenting is a very tricky one, eh? Because the two elements to it. First is actually several elements to it. So first is your personal relationship with your child, and the hope that even prior to divorce, you already had a good, strong relationship, so that the divorce or separation is just a bump in the journey rather than an interruption. So there's one element is the fact that you and your ex are probably not in very good talking terms, and the only thing that's still connecting you is the child. But the emotional roller coasters mean that sometimes the child can get mixed up or used as a pawn in the battles that are going on. And then there's a third element, which is the legal, which is quite a lot to handle. So legal here is, if your co-parent is not cooperating, do you need to take them to court? When you're going to court, what kind of orders are you looking for, and so on and so forth. So I'll say this: one, giving a lot of credit to my ex. We've had our own issues as far as co-parenting is concerned, but I can't say that I had the worst outcome. She was very cooperative in very many respects. I didn't have to go to court to get orders. She didn't have to go to court to get orders. We were able to talk and agree a co-parenting plan, put together an agreement. It took a long time for the agreement to be signed, almost a year, of a lot of back and forth negotiations, changing laws and so on. But even as that was happening, there was still access and so on. And so I give her a lot of credit for that. Having said that, yes, it's a very difficult thing to have to navigate. This person who caused you so much pain, and you caused them so much pain as well. You have to go see them when you pick your child, right? You have to see them when you drop the child. You have to be excited for your child when they come and tell you the fun things they did with the co-parent, because you can't be there showing disinterest or showing like you don't care. This is the child's life. This is your co-parent is their parent as well. They may be your ex, but that's your child's parent. So you have to navigate a lot of internal emotions, internal conflicts. Within my larger circles, there's also the issues of, okay, what do you do if your parent, if the co-parent is absent, is not honoring responsibilities like paying school fees or so on and so forth. There's a lot that comes up, and there's no one answer that fits all. What I will say, which helped me a lot in my journey, even as we were going through the up and down, because it's just that I don't want to get into the details, but our downs during our co-parenting were really low and had me questioning a lot about myself and what I know about myself because of some of the accusations that were being thrown my way. You have to stay very grounded, and it goes back to the point about the support system, because my ex would say something and it really riles me up. I go and talk to somebody, immediately calm down. By the time we're going to the weekend when I have to pick my daughter, I've already shook out in terms of, I'm not going there with a lot of tension. So you have to be very grounded and stay in touch with your support system. Number two, this will sound very counterintuitive for people, but one of the things that saved me, or that I draw strength from, and Noni will give her perspective, is I learned to just let the other person be. So you can't change them. First of all, you've left the relationship, so you don't have daily contact. Number two, they are who they are. You're not going to change it. There's nothing you're going to do that's going to change who they are. So stop trying to change it. Accept them for who they are. Understand that hard feelings happen in the gap that exists between how you expect to be treated and the reality of how you're treated. That gap in between is where the negative feeling sits. If you can reduce that gap and see people for who they are and meet them where they are, your disappointment, your anger, all of these things that would have occupied the space in between disappear. And what happens is the minute you let go and now you're not caught in this game of fighting back and forth, which I found in my experience, something shifts also in them, in that energy, and they now come and find you also where you are, and you're able to have some more reasonable conversations. So like now we've finally gotten almost 2 years to the date. We're now finally in a place where we're almost, you could even say, collaboratively parenting as opposed to parallel parenting, which was part of our experience for a period of time. So I'm very grateful. I've had it easier than most. I sympathize with people who and empathize with people who are having it rough. All I can say is hang in there, recognize you can't change the other person. So focus on yourself, find your healing, find your grounding, meet yourself where you are so that you can be a very good parent to your child. Also, and then I've remembered, I've not addressed one of the questions you asked. You're right. There's this stigma in society against men that either you won't show up or you're using money to control your ex or you're refusing to meet your obligations. In fact, one of the things that happened to me when news of my separation started to spread, I had some friends come and ask me, what did you do? Because the automatic assumption is that as a man, you are the villain and you're the one who did something wrong, which is not necessarily accurate in all respects. And also number two, the first thing to ask your friend when they're telling you they're going through a separation or divorce is not, what did you do? It's how are you doing? I think that's a more empathetic, more sympathetic, more emotionally responsive way of dealing with the thing. So yes, I've had to navigate a little bit of that, but I was very grounded and very clear about my own relationship with my child, being very intentional, never missing my obligations, never missing pick up and drop off, honoring the boundaries around that. And then I leave everything else to be noise. You think what you want to think about what you think is my relationship. What I know is when I'm with my kid, we have the best time. And when I'm not with her, we both miss each other very well. And I'm very grateful for that.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Wadingira, for a wonderful presentation, a wonderful story narration, inspiring. And I like the way you're telling men that, yeah, we need to talk, we need to go to therapy, appreciating the support system that is around you, and even appreciating that, yeah, the journey can be, is a roller coaster. It's not like you're going to heal within a day. Before I invite Noni, I'd like to invite Jen Kimari, who is a psychologist, to just use 1 minute and tell us probably why does probably separation and divorce, you are in love the other day, then maybe tomorrow you're not in love. Why does it feel like grief? I've heard people say that they are not able to eat, they're not able to go to work. Why does it feel like grief? Can you maybe in 1 minute's time, and then our Noni will come after you, tell us why does it feel like that? Thank you.
Good morning, Nata. Good morning, everyone. Yes, when you've gone through a divorce or a heartbreak, it feels like grief. And this is because when you lose a partner, you're also losing more than just a person. You're losing shared dreams, you're losing routines that you had, and you're also losing a sense of identity in a way. And the reason that this feels so deep and it feels so painful, it's because research has shown that heartbreak activates the same regions in the brain as physical pain. So the heartbreak is so unbearable that the pain is that deep, and now you start going through the same process that one goes through when they're going through grief. That's why Mr. G has shared that he went through the phases, went through denial, went through anger, the bargaining, the depression, and finally the acceptance. And that's why you find that heartbreak can be so hard, because most people are not able to navigate through those phases and get to acceptance.
Thank you, Jen, for that explanation. And because of the, for the interest of time, allow me to welcome Gathoni Mainge, who is our next presenter, and also who has gone through a story of marriage and also breakouts at some point. And I know Noni personally because I've personally journeyed with her in one way or the other. I have the consent to say this from her because, yeah, I know her. And the very first time I met Noni, she came in broken. I remember I normally laugh with her and I tell her, yeah, you finished my wipes that day. I had to restock again. But today we normally laugh, and she's a very, very courageous woman, resilient at the moment. She has gone through this journey. She has gone through divorce care, and she's here again to share her story. Noni, in the next coming, maybe if you can use 8 minutes, because I had to give G more time because he's rushing somewhere. But in the next coming 8 minutes, kindly take us through your story and let us hear what happened on your side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ada. Good morning, everyone. If you could allow me to be off the camera, I am experiencing power outage. I think it would be good. So, yeah, my name is Gadoni. I'm Gadoni Mainge. I am a mother of 2 daughters. Separated. This is my 3rd year. I've been separated for, yeah, now this is the 3rd year, like I said. So sometimes leaving a marriage is not a sign of giving up. I think it's a declaration of self-worth. And I highly agree with this statement because it's not a surrender. Rather, it's a testament of strength. I like to say that because, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Probably
Yeah.
there are people who needs to mute.
Can I go on?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, being separated, this is my 3rd year. I have 2 daughters. My journey has not been easy. It has not been linear. Actually, it has taken the whole community, I'd like to say. I have had group support. I have done divorce care with G. I've done divorce care with Nairobi Chapel. It's like G mentioned, it's a 13-week program. I've done divorce care 1, I've done divorce care 2, and those programs have really come in handy towards the journey of healing and rebuilding. So, as a woman, you know, we are conditioned and socialized that we are supposed to take the weight of our marriages. Like we have to be the bearer of our marriages. That if the marriage does not work, you're not a good woman. If it has worked, you're a good woman. If it fails, you're termed as a failure. And therefore, those conditions and socializations are wrong, and they tend to put us in situations that are not good for us, and even for our kids, and even for the other partner. And so when I was married, the marriage was not working. I started seeing cracks from afar, and I had this mentality that this marriage has to work. This is my family. I have to hold everything together. And therefore, as a woman, having been married for 8 years, I started praying, fasting for my partner that they would change. But unfortunately, it was not. The idea was wrong. So at some point, I started experiencing challenges, and at that point, I realized everything was not working, and therefore I sought for some help from therapists. I remember my first contact with a therapy was at the Mater Hospital, where I was seeing the psychologist, who happened to tell me that I'm suffering from anxious, anxiety, and depression as a result of marriage discord, and therefore it was turning clinical. It was very bad, and at that point, I realized at this point I really need to have this. I needed to move out, and the decision to move out is not easy, especially when you have children, because there are so many uncertainties. You don't know what will happen to those children, how they will take the whole thing, the finances. You know, you don't know if you'll move out and lose your job the next minute. There are so many uncertainties surrounding the need to move out, and therefore it took me so long to move because I had my mind was set to live in that particular year in the month of August, but I held to the hope that things would work out, and therefore I stayed long until January of the following year when I decided to move out. And I'm here to tell you that moving out is it's strength. Take a lot of strength to decide to move out, and it's like taking your power back and having everything under your control. But then again, it's not easy because there's the emotional weight that comes with it. In my situation, for example, I remember my productivity had really dipped at the place of work. I really hated nights because I wouldn't sleep at night, and therefore I really wanted to stay up the whole time. So I was not sleeping. I was not, workplace was rough for me. There was the mental fog, like you are not thinking. One moment you are doing something and now the next you've forgotten. There's a lot of anger, bitterness, resentment. And in my case, I remember I was even lashing out to my kids, unconsciously. I would yell at them, I would, it was bad, just to paint a picture. And therefore, I remember a friend of mine reached out and they informed me about psychologist Ava, and that is when I got to meet him at that point. At that moment, he was working at Chiromo Medical Center. So I was having a conversation about the marriage. At that point, I was so broken. I was so low. And I remember he walked me the journey of dealing with my childhood traumas, because they without you understanding the childhood traumas and the impact they have with you choosing the partner you ended up choosing, you cannot take accountability until when you get to that point. So Ava has walked me the journey. I can confidently say that he has been my therapist. And I also after a couple of visits to his clinic, I was lucky to be introduced to divorce care. So at the divorce care, we have been doing those programs that have really come in handy towards the journey of my healing. And where I am, I feel like I've really made the progress. I have managed to process the emotions. I have managed to even forgive the father of my children. I have no bitterness, no anger. We are in good talking, and we are perfectly, or I would say we are seamlessly co-parenting. There are challenges here and there, but with someone, I think the journey in co-parenting is made easier when at least there's one partner who has done the work, because you're able to extend grace to the other person, understanding them and taking them and handling them as they are. So my co-parenting journey, still work in progress, but we are somewhere, because I've allowed him access to the children. He's able to see them whenever he's available. He's supporting them also. And where we are, I think it has taken a lot of work on my part, and I'm grateful and I'm glad that I managed. I did the work, because healing is not easy. You have to be committed and be intentional about doing the work of healing, mourning every losses, because when a marriage ends, there are so many losses, and you have to grieve every loss for you to rise above the losses. And also, I cannot forget to say that God has really been my pillar. I always go back to God, and He has really given peace that I needed in this journey. And I think everything has been moving on well. And I like to say that I like to refer to a Bible verse in the book of Romans,
Tumia
chapter,
zote.
Romans chapter 12, verses 18. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So that has been my verse through and through. For me, I have chosen peace, to live at peace with everyone, because you realize that once you are at peace, once you are able to forgive the other person, the weight, it's like, I like to say forgiveness is like a magic pill. The moment you forgive the other partner, the weight of resentment, the weight of anger, bitterness, it's fall off, and therefore you experience a lot of peace and relief. So that is where I am.
Great, Noni, to hear your story as well. One question that maybe Mr. Wadingira missed from me is the question on self-worth. And I'd like you to just take 1 minute before I invite Emilio Murioki. Just take 1 minute to tell us about self-worth after, during that period of divorce and also after divorce. We are emotional beings as well. So after divorce, did you ever experience moments whereby maybe you saw a beautiful girl or you saw a handsome guy, maybe somewhere, Noni? Did the self-worth, did you have any doubt on the self-worth or something like that? Maybe you two can combine and tell us something.
Okay, on my part, when I was in that marriage, and by the way, I want to make it clear that I take accountability for every fault that I did, because it takes two to tango. And when I was in that marriage, I was not in a position to identify any of my mistakes. I knew I was the best person. I was the best woman. But moments after I left that marriage, after going for therapy, after doing DC, after doing the work of healing, is why I am able to see, oh, actually I did this and this, and I take accountability for that. And I like to tell people that after 1 year, 8 months after the separation, I had experienced a lot of healing, and I penned a letter to the father of my children. I wrote him an apology letter, taking accountability of the things that I had done. And that is where I felt relief completely. So when I was married, I didn't feel like I was out. When I was in that marriage and grieving, I didn't see my self-worth, my self-confidence, my self-esteem had really dipped. So it's after the separation, after doing the work, I now feel my worth. I like to tell myself that I am worth of respect, and I am worth of genuine love. And therefore, where I am, I like to call myself Gadoni version 2, Gadoni 2.0, because I've really done the work. I know my value, I know my worth, I know what I am. I have a purpose, and I know what I am capable of. And therefore, self-worth, I think there are two types of self-worth. When you're married and you're in a toxic relationship, obviously occasioned by both of you, you see no worth in yourself. Then after you leave that marriage, you still feel low, but it's after working out, it's after processing all the issues, the pains, the traumas. It's after when you heal, you realize your worth. You realize, kumbe, you can raise your children. You can be a better woman. You can be a better professional. You can be a better mother to your children. So my self-worth narrative has completely changed from what it used to be.
Good to hear. And what you're telling us is that you have to walk through the journey for you to be able to see the other side of you, right?
You must be willing and intentional. You have to work. You have to do the work.
Okay. Now, Mr. Adingra, I can see you want to give us 1 point, and then Emilio will come to us and tell us maybe how do we end up creating boundaries, and how do we end up building back, like maybe now building back the self-esteem that has already been destroyed. Emilio will come after Mr. Adingra has used maybe 50 seconds on that.
Yeah. So for my 50 seconds, so the first thing, during my marriage and my early life, I can say I had major self-confidence issues, and a very low sense of self-worth. And so my sense of identity derived from my former spouse at the time. Going into separation and divorce, what it did was I went through what I'm calling my Lothario phase. And so my sense of self-worth came from what I was experiencing out there in my attempt to so-called heal. And then more recently, now aligned with Noni, after I did the work and I started being more intentional, I understood that self-worth can only come from inside. And so how you think about yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you treat yourself, is primary, because then that informs how the world treats you and responds to you. So just like Noni, I'm in a place now where everything is derived from my own internal sense of view, and the standards that I've set for myself, and now boundaries, which I guess is now what you're going to talk about, the boundaries that I had to put in place for myself in order to create a safe space for me to be able to thrive. So that's a broad picture of my journey.
I was muted. So thank you so much, Mr. Wadingira, and even Noni. I know we have not exhausted your story, and we have not even gone to the inner details. I'm very, very sure that Yvonne, we're gonna do a repeat of this, or maybe a season 2 of the same, just to try and capture everything. But then we are also taking questions. Probably you can engage us through the chat box, as Emilio is taking us maybe through how to create boundaries and even self-worth after going through a divorce or probably a separation in a relationship. Emilio.
Thank you. I'll start by asking whether you can hear me. Confirm. Maybe other you can note. So
yeah, confirmed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'll start by saying that when individuals fall in love, the brain releases hormones that help them to feel happy and to feel secure. These hormones are the dopamine and oxytocin. So sometimes when these hormones are released into the body, people forget themselves, and they forget that sometimes we need to have some sort of boundaries, to keep some boundaries, maybe physical boundaries. You need to know the extent to which you can do things. You need to know when to say yes, to say no. Sometimes due to these hormones, due to this happiness, people forget how to separate their boundaries, and also how to feel their self-worth. So most importantly, when we talk about boundaries, we need to understand that boundaries are the way that someone what are you comfortable with? What are you not comfortable with as a person? Is your partner comfortable with what you're not comfortable with? Is your partner supporting you? So sometimes point out to think the way that we should create boundaries. Number one is one should know their values. You should know your values. You should identify the important. Identify what is important to you as a person, as a man, as a woman, and also make sure that the person that you're dating is able to know what is important to you. Another thing is that people should have clear communication. People should communicate clearly and be assertive. That is, someone should be able to know when to say no and when to say yes. And people should mean yes when they say yes. Not when you mean no, you're saying yes just to confirm or to be not to compromise your feelings for the feelings of the other person. Another thing is that people need to be consistent with what they say. If you say, if you put boundaries, you should not break these boundaries. You should be at least be consistent with what you've said. Like for example, there are people that are not very comfortable, in relationship that they don't want to show their relationship in public. Kuna wale watu wenye hawapendi kuhug in public comfortably. So if you say that you cannot do that, don't compromise your feelings for the purpose of another person. Make sure that the other person.
In short, what you're telling us, Emilio, maybe we should learn our love languages. Probably, if I can get you right.
Yeah, exactly.
Learn our love languages, and number two, maybe what you're trying also to put across is that people should be able to communicate, get to know, get to understand yourself better. Self-awareness is very, very key. And you're falling in love with someone who is coming from a different background, different personality. And therefore, if we don't give ourselves time in terms of getting to learn the other person, because it takes time. You can stay with someone for 10 years, 15 years, but there is always something that you don't know. Because even when you go and look at what we call the Johari's window, it is divided into a number of things. There is an area that you know about yourself, and other people know very well about it. And there is an area that people don't know about you. You don't know about yourself, but other people do know. But there is also an area of discovery, and is very, very key. And that is how we cultivate self-awareness. And as Emilio has also said, is that we need to be more assertive. Assertiveness helps a lot, because you don't want to communicate one thing today and then tomorrow you are changing. For the interest of time, that is why I've called you Emilio, because I can see we are at 10:57. But more important thing, just echoing what Noni said, is that yes, there comes at times when you need to shed off the things that you have carried from your past, because we all have some baggages at some point, and we need to drop them, because if you continue carrying them, you'll affect the people who you are with. You actually, if you have a wound from your past, you'll actually continue bleeding to people who are very, very innocent in the present. And therefore, childhood trauma is very, very key for you to be able to address it. And that is something that we normally do. Allow me to go through the chat box in the next coming 2 minutes. And Mary Owino, you have commented and you have said, money matters for men, even in steady relationship. It disrupts when a man loses a job. You're opening what we call a Pandora box. And when we start that discussion, I know it will go a long way, but we know we have a season 2, and it will come with what we call the gender roles and the gender responsibilities. And I think that is a big, big area to start on. But I take your point and I note it, and we'll have to discuss it next time. Hello, thank you for this opportunity. Divorced officially 2 months, but now we separated for almost 2 years. Have many questions, but if I can put, I can put 2 across. Can one get healing of their childhood trauma? Yes, I can say you can, and it is, Noni has already confirmed that. I cannot be able to see this well. Okay, I've seen. She's asking whether one can be able to shed off before maybe it gets to a point whereby it is toxic. I'll say yes, because yeah, you have to, when you go through therapy, therapists will actually help you to process what you don't know and probably what has been affecting you in your future. In-laws interfere, and supportive partner has not been supportive and still not supporting even after going through court proceedings. Very, very true. It comes with a lot of back and forth, like Mr. Wadingira had quoted, that at times, you know, your partner, you're okay with this ex, but at some point, it reaches to a point whereby now they don't even want to co-parent and what have you. So it's a roller coaster of things and emotions. But one takeaway that I'm getting here is that a marriage might break, a relationship might break, but that does not define who you are in the future. I think we end it there because it's already 11 on the dot. I'll take it back to Yvonne to wrap it up for us. But before Yvonne, you come in, allow me just to give Hemstone our 10 seconds just to comment, to have a special comment. Kindly, Hemstone, 10 seconds.
Okay, thank you, Arthur. I just have maybe a brief comment to say, and it's just related to the things that our 2 participants have shared. And one thing that stands out is that healing is a journey. It's not, an overnight event, and it actually requires consistent effort, discipline, and sacrifice. You'll have to find that you have to make the very, very small steps, and over time they add up, and you can gradually find out that you are, having a greater perspective of yourself, your ex-partner, and the entire world. I like to say that, I like it to put it this way, that nothing changes if nothing changes. Well, people say time heals, but time itself will not heal until you put in, some effort. Nothing changes if nothing changes. So one thing that maybe didn't come out, and I know it's very common among youngsters, is the feelings of guilt. We find that, we blame ourselves so much for whatever things that happened. It's very important, to take responsibility of, the areas that you feel that you failed, but then don't keep on blaming yourself for the things that happened. Last but not least, I would also like to
to highlight that it's very important that we work on ourselves before we consider, getting into other relationships. We find that we left this relationship because we felt there was a gap, and it's very possible to find ourselves hopping into other relationships and trying to fill that void by getting into someone else's life. So you'll find that once you get into another relationship, you are going to have those patterns repeated. So I really think it's been a very helpful session, but let's remember the point that nothing changes if nothing changes. Don't sleep and expect to wake up feeling better. You have to work on your healing. Thank you.
Thank you, Hemston. Before I give it back to Yvonne, allow me to just give someone who has been raising his hand. Jen Kim, kindly, if you may unmute.
Thank you, Arthur. I wanted to give a point of hope, just a second. And I wanted to note that there's a research that was done in 1996 that showed that it's called post-traumatic growth. And this research shows that after major life disruptions like divorce, many people report increased personal growth, greater self-awareness, and deeper relationships, as we have seen from our guests, both Noni and Mr. G. So this is to give hope that if you're willing to put in the work, you will come out on the other end better than you were. So at least there is hope that despite going through the painful period, there is a better future waiting for you. And someone mentioned about, because we're talking about people who have gone through a divorce with children, it's very important to note that what affects children is not more the divorce, but more of how the relationship is managed between the parents. So people should really be keen on that, because people might fear leaving a marriage, but then it's so toxic, they think they're doing the children a favor. So it's very important to note that the constant fights and the resentment between parents is worse than the actual divorce.
Thank you so much. Yvonne, back to you. And I ask you to read the last question that has been posted. Thank you so much for having us. We will do a season 2. I can see so many people have actually requested for it. We're going to do a season 2. And I know Mr. Wadingira and even Noni will come back and they will share even more. Thank you so much for having us, and may God bless you. It has been Sereni Minds Wellness, and we take cards, we take liaison, and also we do individual sessions and even group sessions. Thank you so much, and may God bless you.
Thank you, Arthur. We'll definitely be sharing your contacts. You can even type in your number on the chat box, even as I read the last question here by Duncan. What are some common misconceptions people have about how mental health and relationships intersect? Arthur, maybe you could handle that before we log off.
Yeah, allow me to read it again for me to be able to understand. I was typing in a number. What are some of common misconceptions people have about how mental health and relationship intersect? Well, I know maybe when you talk about, there are people who have a mental illness or probably are going through a mental illness, let's say maybe depression, let's say maybe bipolar or something like that. If it is diagnosed and probably you're going through some care, that does not mean that these people will never have a stable relationship. They will have a stable relationship. The only thing that they need is support. And I think that has always been a misconception, whereby if you hear someone maybe has gone through therapy, has gone through maybe has gone to a psychiatrist and what have you, we start maybe thinking that, oh, this one will never even have a proper relationship. No, they still remain to be who they are, only that now they have to be supported. But also there is an issue whereby, someone is going through something, maybe they're having a mood issue, or they truly know that they have an issue, but they don't want to come out clean. They have not even gone to a therapist or a psychiatrist, but they keep on using that as a, as a way to gaslight you or a way to escape from their own their own challenges or their own wrongdoings. So someone will do something and then they will tell you, you know what, for me, I have depression. For me, I have these personality issues, and therefore that's why I keep on behaving like this. No, when it comes to relationship, again, try and separate the two, because you fell in love with that particular person, not the things that they acquired later, because the things that they acquired later probably can be sorted out with therapy and with care. But if you realize that your partner is having an issue, make sure that they visit a healthcare facility that can be able to address that. Thank you, Yvonne.
Awesome. Arthur, you could also shed light on, because one of the takeaways I have gotten is, if one is going through a challenge, where do you seek help? Where do you start from? I could suggest some. So of course, at your workplaces, there's the HR, you could reach out through your HR, or there's an employee assistant program that your employer has provided. And then there are also hospitals and churches, but Arthur, you could just shed some light on also in view of programs for children and separated or divorced parents.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yvonne. You have already actually mentioned almost 3/4 of it, because we normally say seek help. Just talk to someone, provided that the person that you're talking to is someone that you know, is someone that is able to listen to you. They're not judgmental, and also they're not misguiding you. Because okay, sometimes you might seek help to a point from a person that is actually giving you a lot of guidance, and they're giving you guidance based on what they are feeling or probably what they went through. Doesn't work like that. You really need to sit down with someone, first of all, who will evaluate what is happening, and they're not telling you what to do. They want you to, evaluate your solution. Churches is number one. Yeah, you can go and seek, help from church. But at the same time, even what Noni came, when Noni came, after we did several sessions of therapy, I actually told her, if at all you have found a place for support, maybe this church is giving you divorce care, then also enroll, but also take care of, make sure that, yeah, there is the church and also there is the science. And that is why it's good to mix the two. The spiritual therapy works, and also we have now what we call the science, psychological perspective. You can as well, reach out there. When you Google, you'll always see a therapist or a psychiatrist somewhere. We have already given you our numbers. The insurances like Liaison have an EAP. If you call them, they'll always link you up to a psychologist. Workplaces, I like the way nowadays workplaces are embracing wellness, because they have even employed wellness managers, people you can just walk to and then they talk to you, and if they're not able to handle your case, they will always refer you in appropriate manner. And therefore, I think at the moment we cannot just complain and say that I don't have anyone to talk to. There is a lot of support around us, and therefore seek that support as much as you can. And also, don't forget about the children, Yvonne. I can see someone talk about that. Yeah, don't forget about the children, because even if they are 3 years, 4 years, they can still go to therapy, because art therapy works so well. They get assisted, they are able to express their emotions, and also they are able to get well guided. It helps a lot. Don't assume that they are just kids. They also consume from the same environment, and it will affect them. Probably in future they'll end up having childhood trauma as a result of what they witnessed or what they had. So don't assume the kids.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Arthur. My takeaway from what you've taught us today is that emotions are primitive. Yeah, they don't know if you're an engineer or a pastor, or it doesn't matter who you are. And so thank you very much for this session, and for everyone for attending. We'll definitely have a season 2. Be on the lookout for it, and see you next month. We will share the recording, and we will also share a toll-free line where you can reach out to us for assistance. So thank you very much, and have a pleasant day, and see you next time. Kwaheri.
Thank you, Kwaheri.